Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I'm the guy who gave the tall man his powers.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss Phantasm, which came out in 1979 from writer, director, producer, cinematographer Don Coscarelli. Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis for Phantasm?
Well, the story follows Mike and Jody, a pair of brothers living in a small Midwestern American town. Their parents have died 2 years before, and Jody, the older brother, is looking after his 13-year-old. Mike starts to notice that a lot of people in his town are mysteriously dying, and that a new mortician at the Morningside Cemetery, the Tall Man, doesn't seem to be human.
The funeral is about to begin.
I'm just going to say right now, I have become a huge fan of the director Don Coscarelli, especially with films like Bubba Hotep and John Dies at the End. The Phantasm series of films I'd always been aware of and sort of enjoyed some of the sequels later on. And it was only really today that I've sought to see the Don Coscarelli style across all of his works. Of course, he got his start back in 1976 with films like Jim the World's Greatest and Kenny and Company. And of course, you would see a lot of his actors turn up in a lot of Don Coscarelli movies, especially actor Reggi Bannister.
Yeah.
This film was made, just like Peter Jackson's Brain Dead, just like Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead, Don Coscarelli made this film on a shoestring budget. Again, also like James Cameron, Don Coscarelli had a nightmare about being chased by these flying spheres that were trying to penetrate him and kill him. And so he sort of took these ideas from his nightmare and kind of put this script together, which would incorporate that nightmare to try and bring it to the screen. Of course, he also had some success with a haunted house that was in one of his other films and realised that he enjoyed scaring the audience. So Phantasm was his attempt to make a horror movie that would actually give the audience the scares. Of course, he didn't have any filming equipment, and he had to borrow and lend all of the cameras and lights in order to shoot the film over weekends, over a year period. That sort of attention, that dedication to his craft and to wanting to get this film made and get his idea on the screen was it's just fantastic to watch. And of course, this film was made on a budget, I think, of 300,000. I think it grossed about 16 to 18 million on its opening weekend.
The first time I watched this, maybe the first time and the second time, I did not get what was going on. It wouldn't be until I'd watched Phantasm and then followed on with the sequels that I actually went back and watched Phantasm 1 again and went, I now get what's going on. But if you're the first time viewer sitting down to watch Phantasm, it's all over the place. But that pays homage to Don Coscarelli because, like Gary said, he was filming this over weekends. He was borrowing equipment here and there. I mean, I read in the notes that he could only get actors to film their scenes when they were free. So literally, he'd get a phone call saying, "Hey man, I've just finished work. Okay, we need you here." And they would bomb to that place, film that sequence, and then they'd go off. And he'd have to go back and re-edit it and make sure that it's structured and stuff like that. And I think he tried to release it over one weekend. And the film was just way too long because of all the character development that he tried to put into the film because he was told that's how films were supposed to be.
The original cut was indeed over 3 hours long. But he had to cut out entire subplots involving sort of Jody and his work, working in a bank, and sort of the tellers in there and his manager and just all these other little bits of stories and characters which are dropped out. I think one of the other bank workers ends up becoming the bar staff in the Dunes bar. And so, a lot of the parts were cut out, but somehow still managed to get put in as extras. Of course, family members were also brought in as extras, and so during the funeral scenes and large groups of people, often or not, that's all the parents of the actors on the set there.
But that's it. The film starts with a guy in a cemetery having sex with a woman.
In a horror movie?
Yeah, you're just like, this is just going to end bad. I know it is.
It's kind of the best way to start, really.
But the woman pulls out a knife, stabs the guy. I think his name's Tommy. It turns out to be. Stabs Tommy. Tommy dies. And then in a quick edit flash, the woman becomes a man. And then it's the next day. It's literally the next day, and they are burying Tommy. And you see for your first time Jodie and Reggie together. And like I said, the first time I watched this film, I was like, what the fuck was that? What the hell's going on? Literally, this film, you will not understand until the end. And I think that's what makes this film absolutely priceless. Is because a lot of movies, you know, if you see the same repetitional stuff over and over again, the film starts, you're already like, he's the killer. Or, yeah, I know what they're going to do. And, oh, I'm bored by this. I'm only 15 minutes in. Phantasm, you sit there like...
Oh, that was great, baby.
The first sort of 15-20 minutes of the film after that initial killing it's very surreal.
Yeah.
And it's very slow paced.
Yes.
And that was my criticism. That's 15-year-old me criticizing the film.
Yeah.
After seeing the sequels and then trying to go back to where it started. It's like going back and watching Alien after watching Aliens. You're like, where's all the machine guns and where's all the action? It's like, it's a much smaller, intimate story. And it's about two brothers, especially the younger brother, Mike, who's dealing with his parents' loss.
Yeah.
And kind of hanging around a cemetery in a graveyard for the most part. Of course, there is now the funeral of Tommy from the beginning, which has brought these friends back together. And we already noticed that something is awry when we see the tall man put the coffin back in the hearse on his own. There is a small thing where you can sort of see the support ropes that they held onto this balsa wood coffin, but still the image of the tall man just picking it up and throwing it back in is almost like a Terminator.
Oh, man. Angus Scrimm. Wow. That guy's always going to give me nightmares. The tall man, I think...
He is one of horror's... one of the greatest icons in the horror genre. He is... You know, he gets put up there with Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Pinhead, Chucky, you know, all of the big icon sort of series, anthology of movies. The Tall Man is definitely one of those.
But the beauty about the Tall Man, I feel, is like all those horror characters that you just named off. They're puppets, or they're covered in makeup, you know, or there's something that makes them...
Or they wear masks.
Or they wear masks, you know, there's something that makes them stand out. There's something that makes them unique. The Tall Man is just really freaking tall. And Angus Scrimm doesn't even need to say that much. He literally just has to stand there in a black suit at the end of a corridor or walking down the street, and you just look at him like, oh my god.
He really is the original Slender Man.
Yeah,
but and it's interesting that you mentioned about his height, because Angus Scrimm, although being a fairly tall man, he's not as tall as he's portrayed in the film. A lot of the time, he's standing on apple crates, or he's on elevated platforms, because I think he was about the exact same height as the actor who plays Jodie.
Yeah.
So for a lot of the shots, they kind of tricked the audience to make Angus Scrimm look even more intimidating than he already is.
The funeral is about to begin, sir.
Okay.
Just absolutely brilliant. And like you said, you know, when Mike sees him just pick up that coffin and shove it into the back of the hearse on his own, you're like, hold on a minute, they're supposed to be burying that coffin. Why is he stealing it? But obviously, we're not going to go into that bit too early, because spoilers.
Well, the whole film is building up this air of mystery, because we hear these strange noises coming from the morgue area.
Yeah.
And of course this music is playing throughout, this sort of heavy 70s synthesized horror strings, which makes you feel uneasy. It makes you feel awkward because you're also not wondering. You're wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
And these actors are also kind of unsure of what's going on whilst dealing with the loss of their friend.
The sense of eeriness, though. I mean, like I said, the music playing, there are a lot of sequences in Phantasm 1 where there's just no dialogue.
Yeah.
You're just following the characters around certain areas and this music is playing in the background and you're waiting for something to jump out at you. But it doesn't, which is even more freakier for me than something actually jumping out, because I'm on the edge of my seat, like, where is it? Where is it? And then it cuts to something else.
There's just lots of strange shadows just very quickly going around the corner. So you're just like, did I see that? Did that happen?
Yeah. The psychic lady. I want to bring up the psychic lady quickly.
Very peculiar scene. Took me off guard.
Yeah. This lady doesn't actually appear in any of the other Phantasm movies, but she seems to be like an integral part of this one. Mike goes to see her to discuss his brother Jody leaving him and getting out of town and doing something with his life. And this lady, she doesn't say anything. She just kind of sits there in her chair with glasses on, and her granddaughter hears what her grandmother says and then tells Mike. But I always love that little sequence where the box appears. You know? The box appears and they tell Mike to put his hand into it, and he doesn't want to. And he does, and it starts attacking him and he gets all scared, and then they explain to him that fear is the killer, which is kind of the background meaning symbolism for this film, because obviously it's something that the tall man will feed upon. And then the box just disappears again, and I'm like, for a low independent movie filmed on a shoestring budget, he put a lot of care into just making that box appear and disappear so that it stands out.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as that box disappears, you automatically know that you are in a fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, Don Coscarelli loves to blend the genres. He never likes to stick to just one genre, especially horror. He likes to add in some comedy or some fantasy to his horror.
Yeah.
And having the magic of this fortune teller enabling this box to disappear, it then makes you think, was the box even real?
Yeah.
Did it ever exist? Because she starts cackling like a crazy woman as soon as he leaves. I also just want to point out that that's pretty much the second reference to Dune in this film. Obviously, the pub is called Dune,
right.
And the black box putting your hand in and dealing with the pain is, reference to Dune. We are pretty much throughout the film spend it with Mike and Jody.
Yeah.
And Mike is sort of dealing with the loss of his parents, and at the same time, he's dealing with the loss of his brother, because he knows that his bigger brother is ready to go on to the next part of his life, to leave this small town.
Yeah.
And doesn't really want to come back, but at the same time he's tied there by his brother.
Yeah.
And so Mike just kind of follows Jody around, and we see Jody go into the bar. He picks up a girl within like 20 seconds.
The girl from the beginning.
Indeed. The succubus, and they disappear off to the graveyard for breasts.
Wow.
Wow. It is a horror movie after all.
Yeah. And I love the way that the sequence plays out, because, you've been seeing Mike following Jody all over the place. And so in a way, it's a good thing that Mike was there, because Mike starts to hear the strange noises again that we have been hearing throughout the film. And we come across our first view of this little dwarf creature thing runs at Mike and scares him right through the cemetery.
What the heck?
Of course, these dwarf-like creatures would turn up again and again in the movie, and of course the rest of the franchise, and you can't help but recall the difference between these dwarfs and the Jawas from Star Wars.
Yeah.
Of course, both films sort of were being made and came out around the same time, and it's just purely coincidental.
Yeah.
They didn't rip each other off. It wasn't the intention anyway.
But the cool thing is, I mean, Mike manages to save his brother Jody, and it's like a kind of invaders from Mars motif. You know, the young child seeing all these strange things going on and trying to convince the adults that something's up. But none of the adults want to buy it because they're not seeing it, and he's just a kid, it's his imagination, it's just, you know, it's just all in his head. But it's not. Mike takes it upon himself to investigate the Morningside Cemetery. You know, he's starting to notice that people he knows are just inadvertently dying, you know, in accidents here and they're ending up at the cemetery. And we already know that he has issues with the tall man after seeing him walk down the street and the weird kind of freezing pose Angus Scrimm does when he stands next to Reggi's ice cream truck.
Well, there is sort of a theory, which I think is pretty credible, and it does basically... There's a sequence much later in the film where Mike and Reggi get a glimpse at the other world, perhaps where these creatures or aliens have come from.
Yeah.
And you only get a very quick glimpse of it, and you can pretty much... The only colour you'll remember is red. And it would lend credence to the idea that perhaps wherever these creatures have come from, it's a very, very hot planet.
Yeah.
And so the ice cream van and the ice, or the cold from it, actually sort of is his weakness.
Yes.
So he's kind of trying to keep his distance from it. I don't know why he didn't just keep moving on, but it would suggest that maybe he doesn't like the cold. It's either that, or he couldn't decide between a Magnum and a Cornetto. Yeah.
Obviously, Gary has just slightly spoiled it there. The dwarfs are crushed corpses being used by the tall man to be sent through a doorway to a hell planet. What the fuck, Don Coscarelli? Like I said, the first time I watched this film, I was expecting undead. I was expecting zombies, vampires,
Well,
werewolves.
technically they are the undead zombie dwarfs.
Yeah, but that's what blew my mind, and that's what makes this film so amazing. Was that as a first-time viewer, you know, like we said, the slow pacing of the beginning, you know, the build-up of the brothers, the kind of chase sequences, building up to them finding out this massive reveal of them crushing human corpses into canisters and sending them to the angry red planet. Reggi Bannister, he is noted as one of the hardest working men in horror. And the fact that he had a couple of little parts building up to Phantasm, but the Phantasm series, he's like the Ash of the Phantasm series. He would, like Gary said, in the later movies, become more of a badass. But in this one, he is literally like Ash from Evil Dead 1.
Totally. There's the sequence when they have this insect, which they have trapped momentarily, which does escape, and the thing from Angry Red Planet looked better than this thing.
Shoestring budget, though. I mean, shoestring
totally
budget.
Granted, but you know, the charm of the effect, it just wins you over, because you look at it and you're like, how could you possibly be scared of that rubber-looking insect? But the thing is, the actors, there's no stunt doubles, and they sort of sell the effect of trying to wrestle this thing between the two of them as they bounce down the stairs and try and stick it into the trash disposal in the sink. And they fail to do that too, so it escapes again. And of course, Reggie's sort of thrown around and ends up on the floor. And it was at that point I was just like, yeah, you are like Ash from the first Evil Dead. You know, your first encounter and you're on your ass.
Yeah.
But later on, different story.
Yeah, as the film would progress, like we said, Mike would manage to convince not only Jodie what the hell's going on, but Reggie too, that there is something weird going on in the cemetery with the tall man. So Mike goes up to investigate on his own and gets chased by a silver sphere. This thing is amazing. After watching Phantasm the first time, I didn't fully get what was going on, but I would understand the importance of the sphere after playing Turok 2, Seeds of Evil, and Turok 3, once they had released the cerebral bore. This sphere flies down corridors in quite a unique, for its time, special effect. Hits a guy right between the eyes with 2 daggers, and then drills into his head and spurts blood out of the bull's kind of asshole.
Awesome. Well, you know, I always thought that it was awesome, but, you know, watching it now, it's a great idea. It is absolutely Phantasm's most iconic scene in the film.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, the balls of Phantasm it's just as iconic as the tall man himself. But the effect today looks really ropey.
Well,
now, the main instance is that when you have the actor there and when the ball hits him, his head doesn't move. It doesn't look like he's taken an impact at all. And that would be the same in the sequels as well.
Yeah.
You know, when the ball is there and you can see the prosthetic head,
Yeah.
you can see that the blades have not really connected properly. It wouldn't be supporting itself.
Yeah.
When the actor's holding the ball, there's no it doesn't move at all. I know it's an alien device and I'm not a scientist, but it just didn't look quite right. The effect is very Evil Dead and the blood just pouring out everywhere, and that is brilliant. But that wasn't what almost gave the film its dreaded X rating, which is pretty much a banned rating in the UK.
Yeah.
And that was because after the blood effect, we then have the piss effect. That really made the studios panic when they were looking to release the film or, you know, classify the film. But a few phone calls here and there, the scene was able to stay in, and they were given an R rating.
Why would you care about a guy pissing himself?
I think it's one of the earliest films I can remember a guy pissing himself after being killed.
Yeah, but scientifically, isn't that right?
Yes,
You know, once you die, you lose all bodily functions. But somebody sits there and goes, "Oh, no, you're seeing piss on the floor. Oh, no, that's bad." What? And the gallons of blood spurting out of his face isn't? Oh, okay, you know.
Well, that's much more cartoony.
After watching Phantasm a few times, you know, a lot of the tall man's kind of minions have this yellow blood inside them. So I always thought that was just its excess blood coming out. Obviously, it is a little bit more watered down, and we do know it is piss, you know, because obviously they tried to ban it. But I'm just like, well, so who cares? It's just piss.
I was wondering who that guy was that was even walking around Morningside, because Mike's hidden himself in a coffin and that guy sort of wanders around. The tall man turns up, so he wanders back out.
Yeah.
And then he turns up again later on and then is killed by the sphere. And
Well, I
it's
think he's one of the tall man's, like I said, one of the tall man's minions.
Yeah.
You know,
So does the spheres just kill his minions indiscriminately?
Yeah, the spheres... Obviously, we don't want to go into too many details about how the spheres work in the later films, but in these ones, they are just kind of like guard dogs.
Yeah.
You know, they fly around the cemetery and the inside of the mortuary, and they just obviously they must just stop anybody wandering around. And it's actually aiming for Mike, but Mike just manages to get out of the way just in time, and that's why it hits. Once it's hit, it's automatic. It's just going to drill the fuck out of whatever it hits.
I do have another sort of issue with the script here,
Right.
and I know it's probably for budgetary restraints, but there's a point when Mike says to Jodie, "We need to go to the cops. We need to go to the sheriff and take the evidence." And they're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah." And Mike's like, "Yeah, it's a great idea. Let's go." And then something happens, and they never bring up going for help again. They never once consider going to get help.
Well, yes, but obviously, I mean,
But what I like about that though is that it is about then the camaraderie of the three of them.
Yeah,
It's you know, the later films would go on to sort of be road trippy. But having the three of them there, you just kind of like, that's the team.
Yeah,
you know,
that's the main
they
team.
want to handle it themselves.
Yeah.
And of course, like, you know, the car.
Oh, yeah, I was going to bring up the car.
It's just, isn't it just one of the horror's icons as well? It's
That's
just
the most beautiful
that
car. It's just it's just the wheels, the big ass wheels, the sound of the engine, you know, the fact that it's, you know, black color all the way through. You know, I love the car from Evil Dead, but it is a bit of a rusted piece of shit, really. You know, that car really gets up to what, maybe 40 miles per hour and dies. You know, the car from Phantasm, we're looking at like 70, 80, 90, 100 miles per hour bombing down the road. I mean, there's that whole sequence where they're being chased by the hearse, and they're having the shotgun blast with it, and they're blowing up things. It's fucking badass.
There's another thing that I really want to bring up and talk about, and that is the tall man. We know that he's an alien. We know that he's come from either another planet or another dimension.
Yeah.
Or a parallel universe or another time altogether.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about the mystery of him, is that I don't quite understand why he likes to turn himself into a woman and seduce men, to take them out, to have sex with them before killing them, before turning them into zombie dwarfs to send back as a slave to his own planet. Why does he go through all that much trouble? Is he just a kinky kind of alien?
I want to say yes.
Because the only other...
But the rational side of me says it's a horror movie and you need boobs.
Yeah, but I don't really want to see the tall man's boobs.
Yeah, I got freaked out by this. Like I said, it always freaked me out, the fact of, you know, he becomes a woman to lure these people out. And yet in the later films, I mean, in the later films he does change his form. He can change form, and that's how he does lure people to kill them off. But I think in this movie alone, in Phantasm 1, he is trying to be more kind of secretive with what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, so he's not just going to walk around and grab people and kill them like he does in the later movies, because it's just a little bit too obvious. You know, he's going to hide himself in the form of a woman. He doesn't get... I don't think he gets any real pleasure from having sex with the guys. It's just kind of the suit that he's wearing.
Yeah.
You know, and then obviously stabbing them. Maybe he enjoys watching them die. Then obviously, he's got the body right next to Morningside anyway, so it's not like he has to drag them halfway across town in front of everybody to squash them down and send them off. I don't fucking know. I'm trying just ad-libbing here. I mean, spoilers. For those of you who've never seen Phantasm and are wanting to obviously go and see the first one and watch the series, and obviously stop the video now. But the ending to Phantasm, I always thought, is just absolutely brilliant. After everything we've gone through, and the big fight sequences, and the big chase sequences, and the weird dream sequences, and every little crazy thing that could go along, you're still sat there going, what the fuck is going on? And like we said, Reggie does his little tuning fork moment on the dimensional gateway, which ends up transporting the mortuary to wherever it's gone or it's exploded or something.
I just want a quick FYI for that mortuary.
Yeah.
That building has been used in several films before this and several films since this.
Nice.
It is one of the... I mean, it's not perhaps as iconic as the Bates Motel or the house from Amityville.
Yeah.
But just some of the shots of that building, it just fills you with a sense of dread straight away.
Yeah. And like I said, the building gets sucked away to another dimension. Reggie ends up getting stabbed by the lady who turns into the tall man. The tall man chases Mike and Jody, and they drop him down a hole. And you're
Wait a minute,
like,
Reggie died?
yep, Reggie dies.
He got stabbed right in the stomach, and you're like, I know that character is not supposed to die, but wait, what?
But
he is definitely dead.
But this is it. This is what always makes this film so brilliant, is the fact that Mike wakes up from a dream, and you realise that Reggie is alive, and it's Jody who had died in a car accident.
But I just saw what...
Yeah. That's the brilliant thing about this film. This is why by the end of the film you go, oh, that's why it didn't make any sense and it was all jumbled round, and was it all a dream? And then the tall man turns up and pulls Mike through a mirror, and boom, it's the end of the film. Other horror movies would go on to take that idea. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Evil Dead. Take your hero and take away the ending. There's no happy ending. There are no heroes. The tall man lives.
But the thing is, it's hard to know how to approach this, looking at this ending, because granted, this is one of the earliest sort of end of the movie jump scares.
Yep.
But the whole film does play out like Don Coscarelli's Nightmare. Yeah. It's an elongated dream sequence, especially there's characters that have dreams or that they look like they've completely dozed out. Yeah. And they wake up in strange sort of places. Like, how did I get here? What am I doing here? I'm being chased by the tall man. And some of those shots, again, when the tall man in the mausoleum just walking towards the camera, very frightening, but very dreamlike as well. And so having the actor wake up at the end, or the character wake up at the end, and you're like, the whole film was a dream or a nightmare. It's movie sin to do that. However, it is just a case of Don Coscarelli playing with the audience, because maybe what we saw happen was in a different parallel universe, a different time, a different what?
Yeah.
What?
That's it. That's what I mean. That's why after a few watches of Phantasm 1, you're like, you make up your own idea.
Well, critics would argue that it was kind of a cop-out to do that. It was, so that people would walk away from the film going, oh, do you think he was real? And was it a dream? And everything else. Whereas he could have just had a simple ending. Tall man trapped in the mine. And...
Nah. It doesn't play... Yeah, but it doesn't work like that, especially with the later films in the series.
Yeah.
Coming away from the film, still talking about the film, and wondering and questioning and wanting to go back and watch again. That's what gives the film such backbone. That's what fuels its fire. Sitting there at the end of the film going, bad guy's dead. We don't have to worry anymore. You're just like, well, I don't need to watch it because I know how it ends. Like I said, I watched Phantasm the first time. I was like, what the fuck? I watched it the second time. I'm like, I still don't understand it. Watching it with the relevant sequels, especially... And, I'm just going to chuck this in now, especially with the ending to the fourth movie, the way the fourth movie ends, that just leads you all the way back to number one. And it just comes right back round in the loop again, and it's just what makes Phantasm so freaking awesome.
I have a bunch of favourite scenes in the film, all scenes that we've already mentioned and discussed. I guess the most iconic moments in the film are the nightmare sequences.
Yeah.
The most in particular is the moment when Mike wakes up in bed and the tall man is sort of leering right up over above him, standing on an elevator platform. But you can see the headstones of the graveyard behind. The lighting is just perfect, and then 2 zombie ghouls come up out of the ground and grab him. I'm like, that is nightmarish, and it just looks fantastic. So I guess for me, that is the most memorable moment in the film.
For me, I mean, the whole film is just awesome, but I mean, first favorite sequence is when Mike comes across the gravedigger in the cemetery, and the way he just kind of screams and runs past his brother. You know, like we said, Don Coscarelli loves his little comedy moments, and for as eerie and freaky and scary as this film is, that scene just fucking makes me laugh.
What the heck?
Wait here, it's my little brother. I think he's got some kind of a problem.
The second scene is the turn up of the sphere. Absolutely iconic weapon, guard dog. I don't know what the fuck it is, but it just stands out, and the way it kills its prey is freaking awesome. Third favorite scene is after Mike has cut the fingers off of the tall man, he takes one home, and it's still moving. And then it turns into the fly. And then there's that whole sequence with the fly. And the way it crawls on Mike's head and comes up the top. Oh, it's just awesome. And the ending. The ending is just amazing. Just the way you wake up with Mike and Reggie tells him that it's all been a nightmare. And he goes upstairs and the final look of Angus Scrimm going, boy! And Mike disappearing through the mirror. Oh, still gives me nightmares.
I highly recommend Phantasm. It just shows Don Coscarelli's creative imagination just being applied to film. He does a great job with the music, with the actors.
Yeah.
There is a couple of moments when the pacing of the scene just seems a little bit right, and the actors' sort of lines of dialogue seems a little bit hammy.
Yeah.
But considering a lot of these are not well-known celebrities, they do a fantastic job with these characters. It makes you care for them all the same. The story, it is a mystery, and your first time watching it, you can sort of enjoy watching these characters uncover this horrible thing that's going on and get drawn into it eventually for the road trip that would be the sequels, which we will start looking at next week. Definitely check out Phantasm. If it was a film you looked at before and was sort of put off by its slow pacing, go back and watch it now with a new appreciation, and I guarantee you're going to have a good time if you're a horror fan with Phantasm.
I definitely recommend Phantasm. Like Gary said, start with the first one, follow into 2, 3, 4, and hopefully, if it gets released this year, Phantasm 5 Ravager, which I'm really, really, really excited for. Micheal Baldwin is just absolutely brilliant as the child actor. He does, even though he might seem a bit hammy, it's 1979 and he's doing what he can on a shoestring budget with a thrown together script. Reggie, Bannister, he's up there with Ash. Him and Ash, Reggie and Ash should have their own fucking TV series. It would be awesome. And Angus Scrimm, the only horror character that still gives me nightmares, and I'm a fucking adult.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.